I'm a rude bastard. I left my manager at home. You fucked up and left the hammers at home. Ain't nobody shopping my style. We hit them like, if niggas get out of line, we hit them like, fuck you. Fuck you. Fuck you. You fool.
William Joseph Simmons. The former lay preacher, born in Alabama, was a member of fraternal orders. In November 1915, he organized a climb of Stone Mountain near Atlanta. Simmons dreamed of re-establishing the Ku Klux Klan to capitalize on Confederate heritage and make some money along the way. Hiding his face in a skull mask, Simmons created a ritual, secret ceremonies, and coded words. Charity begins at home. He proclaimed himself the Grand Imperial Wizard and Emperor of what he called the Invisible Empire. He wrote the Klan, the Klansman's Code of Honor. A new KKK was born with a leader and laws. While the birth of a nation was spreading its venom, Simmons made announcements in the press announcing the rebirth of the Klan. The film thus became a 180-minute advertisement glorifying his movement. Simmons' hooded horsemen could be seen on film posters and in newspapers throughout the country.
Article written by the Washington Post in April of 2018 on William Joseph Simmons. Just to give a little bit of backstory and insight into who this douchebag really was. The preacher who used Christianity to revive the Ku Klux Klan. And at the risk of sounding redundant, we're just going to read the entire article. It's not that long, just bear with us for a moment. Simmons, born in 1880 on a farm in Harpersville, Alabama, was an itinerant Methodist minister. He established himself as an imperial wizard and created a pamphlet, which he called the Fiery Summons. The pamphlet featured a drawing of a masked horse and a rider in a robe carrying a burning cross with a headline that read, "Yesterday, Today, and Forever." According to the Georgia Encyclopedia, the Methodist Episcopal Church eventually suspended Simmons for inefficiency. It was approaching midnight on October 16, 1915, when Methodist preacher William Joseph Simmons and at least 15 other men climbed Stone Mountain in Georgia. They built an altar, set fire to a cross, took an oath of allegiance to the Invisible Empire, and announced the revival of the Ku Klux Klan. Beneath the makeshift altar, glowing in the flickering flames of the burning cross, they laid a U.S. flag, a sword, and a Holy Bible. Restricting members to white Christians, the Klan wore white robes to symbolize purity, burned crosses to signify the light of Christ, and picked selective scriptures from the Bible to preach white supremacy. Some of those scriptures, as I said, we will go over. The Invisible Empire's comeback was aided by Hollywood's first blockbuster, D.W. Griffith's The Birth of a Nation, which glamorized the Klan. And what a blockbuster it was, because every white person in the country wanted to see the movie. By the early 1920s, the Klan boasted 5 million members across the country and had infiltrated thousands of churches with its hateful doctrines. The day 30,000 white supremacists in KKK robes marched in the nation's capital. This will be interesting. Simmons believed Christianity supported white supremacy. Kelly J. Baker, author of the book The Gospel According to the Klan, said in an interview he and other Klan leaders would look to Christianity to find support for racism. Even liberal Protestant churches supported white supremacy. That seemed the natural order of things, just as people used biblical texts to support slavery. In 1921, Simmons testified to Congress that he was a minister, not one church but two. As a brief introduction, please, I am a churchman and proud of it. I hold a distinction which I suppose few men hold, and that is I am a member of two churches, the Congregational Church and a full-fledged associate member of the Missionary Baptist Church, given me as an honor. Simmons told the House Rules Committee, which was investigating the Klan and the terrible things being done to innocent people in the South. In Klan Propaganda and its 1916 rule book, Simmons said that only good Christian white people who believed in racial purity and Protestant morality would save the country from destruction. White supremacists believe mainstream religion, including Christian denominations and their institutions, have fallen astray from God and are under the control and influence of Satan. As a result, white supremacists interpret scriptures and spiritual parables through the lens of racial discrimination and hate. In this way, they can justify their beliefs, which are vile and deplorable, as good, moral, and responsible. Klan members believe the Bible is the family history of the white race. According to the report, they believe that white Christians are morally and spiritually superior to other races. In his 1921 testimony to Congress, Simmons said he relaunched the Klan after watching the film Birth of a Nation. The 1915 racist blockbuster promoted the Klan as the great defender of white womanhood. President Woodrow Wilson showed the film at the White House. Yes, President Woodrow Wilson. The Ku Klux Klan was dead. The first Hollywood blockbuster revived it. With the help of a public relations team headed by Edward Clark and Elizabeth Tyler, the Klan's rosters exploded. The white Protestant Americans who feared that immigration and changing social morals would overthrow their social dominance, wrote Baker. In his congressional testimony, he described the Klan as simply a fraternal, patriotic, secret order for the purpose of memorializing the great heroes of our national history, inculcating and teaching practical fraternity among men, to teach and encourage a fervent, practical patriotism toward our country. Isn't that what Confederates, people who the Confederates, the dudes that run around with the Confederate flag, isn't it similar to what they say now? I guess that's the new Klan, right? The obituary offered a final condemnation of Simmons' legacy. The organization, deeply rooted in Native ignorance, flourished in rural areas. Sometimes, too, Klansmen lynched, tortured, and beat the helpless. Imagine that. Soft targets, that's pretty much what they went after.
The popular image of the Klan, as we often think about it, is fundamentally created by Griffith's Birth of a Nation. That is the film that creates the image of the white hood and robes that then gets adopted by the second Klan.
The Klan didn't make the film, Birth of a Nation, but it used it to great effect. One of their major recruitment techniques was they would go into a new town. They would have a showing of the film, and you'd have to remember that for most people, film was very new and very thrilling in the early 1920s. I'm sure many people had never seen a film before until they saw this. Furthermore, the Klan would charge money for people to come and see the film. In a small town, this could be a really major, exciting event.
The Birth of a Nation is considered the first Hollywood blockbuster. More than 50 million Americans went and sat in awe at this racist film. For most viewers, the spectacular battles, Lincoln's assassination, and of course, the Klan's heroic victories were seen as truth.
It was a narrative fiction film that D.W. Griffith had constructed specifically to convey the idea of historical authenticity. That he has title cards drawing on quotes from popular academics and historians to try to convey the idea that this was the truth of Reconstruction. And it was a truth that was widely accepted at the time.
This movie was seen as, in effect, telling the story
of the South after the Civil War. And so it really becomes the predominant way that people in America understands Southern history, and which, of course, is bound up in our national history.
African Americans organized to fight back against this propaganda. The NAACP, a group created to defend their rights, tried to get the film banned, and some cities boycotted it. But people in power remained unmoved. Griffith's work was the first feature film to be shown at the White House for a sitting president, the Democrat Woodrow Wilson.
We think of Woodrow Wilson as being essentially a progressive president. But when Birth of a Nation was shown in a private showing in the White House to Woodrow Wilson, he infamously said it's like writing history with lightning. That's how incredibly good this movie was.
President Wilson praised it. He thought it was great. He was absolutely a racist and a segregationist. That doesn't mean that he would necessarily have approved of Klansmen going around and lynching people. It's also important to understand that Wilson was himself a Southerner. He depended on votes from the South for his position. In the South, you had basically an electorate that was only white, and Woodrow Wilson could not afford to contradict them.
So Wilson's essentially endorsement of Birth of a Nation, and therefore of the idea of the Klan, helped
progress while promoting the Ku Klux Klan and overseeing segregation of the federal workforce. The 28th president helped erase gains African Americans had made since Reconstruction. Woodrow Wilson is best known as the World War I president who earned a Nobel Peace Prize for his efforts to found the League of Nations, a progressive reformer who fought against monopolies and child labor. He served 2 terms starting in 1913. But Wilson was also a segregationist who wrote a history textbook praising the Confederacy and, in particular, the Ku Klux Klan, because somebody who would praise the Confederacy and the Ku Klux Klan could not possibly be someone who would support and advocate for violence against black people. There's just no way, right? As president, he rolled back hard-fought economic progress for black Americans, overseeing the segregation of multiple agencies of the federal government. While Wilson was lauded for his role in World War I, historians and activists have long called attention to his other actions, and institutions have grappled with how to respond to this side of his legacy. In June 2020, Monmouth University announced it would rename its Woodrow Wilson Hall. After years of protest, Princeton University said it would remove his name from its prestigious public policy school, explaining that his segregationist attitude and policies made Wilson an especially inappropriate namesake. In places like Washington, D.C., historians and presidents have called for removing his name from public high schools. In reevaluating Wilson's legacy, it's important to understand not only his leadership through a world war or his business and labor reforms. Now listen to this carefully. It's also important to know that on the home front, he perpetuated violence and inequality for black Americans. Here's how. First, by praising the Confederacy and the Ku Klux Klan. President Woodrow Wilson seated far left at the Arlington National Cemetery, where Robert E. Lee III, grandson and namesake of the Confederate general, speaks at the dedication of a Confederate monument in Arlington, Virginia in 1914. While Wilson's speech that day focused on national unity, his historical writings have romanticized the Confederacy. Wilson is often associated with the state of New Jersey because that's where he served as governor and as president of Princeton University, but he was born in Antebellum, Virginia in 1856 and lived in Georgia during the Civil War. His parents supported the Confederacy, and Wilson's 5-volume history textbook, A History of the American People, echoes those attitudes. The book adheres to what historians call the lost cause narrative, a non-factual view that romanticizes the Confederacy, describes the institution of slavery as a gentle patrician affair, recasts the Civil War as being about states' rights instead of slavery, and demonizes Reconstruction-era efforts to improve the lives of the formerly enslaved. Wilson wrote that Reconstruction placed Southern white men under the intolerable burden of government sustained by the votes of ignorant Negroes, and that those white men responded by forming the Ku Klux Klan. He described the Klan as an invisible empire of the South, bound together in loose organization to protect the Southern country from some of the ugliest hazards of a time of revolution. In reality, the KKK was a violent terrorist group that targeted Black Americans. Confederate veterans founded the paramilitary group after the Civil War ended in 1865. The first wave of the KKK only disbanded in the early 1870s after President Ulysses S. Grant pushed through laws allowing him to go after it with military force. So there you have it. A president who would not advocate for violence against Black people.
Of the Klan helped popularize the Klan enormously.
The birth of a nation gave the Klan a nationwide audience. Joseph Simmons was ambitious. He understood that his little business had a big future. That meant advertising. So the Grand Wizard hired two marketing experts, Elizabeth Tyler and Edward Clark. The two advertising specialists understood how to help the organization make money. They concocted a pyramid scheme.
If I recruit you to be a member of the Klan, I can keep 40% of your initiation fee. You can then go and recruit him, and you can get his 40%. And that goes on until you run out of people to recruit. And the initiation fee at the beginning was $10. And $10 is worth well over $120 today. This is not an organization of poor people.
There is a business to the Klan, and it's called Klan members. You pay a membership fee, and all the money that you pay every month, your dues, go to the Imperial Wizard, and he uses that money to travel around and party with everybody at these damn Klan lighting ceremonies, these cross light ceremonies. It pays his bills, he uses it to buy alcohol, he doesn't work, he doesn't have a job, we have jobs. It's just a scam, man. The whole thing is a scam.
They built this up. They also forced the Klan members to rent their robes. You were not allowed to sew your own robes and so on. They standardized the robes as these white sheets that we see today with the cross with the blood drop on the front and so on. And ultimately, the Klan grew incredibly quickly.
The sermons, meetings, and nighttime ceremonies drew in more and more people. In just a few months, the group went from 2,000 to 300,000 members. At $10 to join, the Klan became rich and powerful, starting with its Imperial Wizard, His Majesty William Joseph Simmons.
Well, for a while in the 1920s, the Klan was exceedingly powerful and had a great deal of money. William Joseph Simmons, for instance, the first leader of the Second Era Klan, lived in a multi-million-dollar mansion. So for a while, with all of these dues coming in, it was incredibly successful.
The New World was changing, and the fears of the Protestant majority did too. You need to move with the times. The Klan grew its business of hatred. In addition to hating Black people, the Klan adopted anti-immigrant, anti-urban, anti-communist, anti-Semitic, and anti-Catholic positions. It claimed all sorts of virtues for itself and naturally advocated for prohibition.
The colonists were essentially Protestants. So all the way, they came from Europe with their prejudices against Catholics, so-called papists. They didn't really care about the United States. If the Pope told them to go shoot the president, they would do that because they were all loyal slaves of the Pope. So there was that idea. There was the idea that they drank too much, right? They actually used wine in the communion service. And this is, of course, at a time when Prohibition has just been passed, so Catholics were associated very strongly with alcohol. Also, Catholicism was connected to essentially poorer, darker-skinned countries in Europe. So, what they thought of the Greeks and the Portuguese and the Spaniards and the Southern Italians. And at that time, those people were not really viewed as white. They're not really white, they're just kind of white.
The organization grew spectacularly, as did its bank account. The group became one of the most important political organizations in the country. It spilled out of its southern base and flooded the rest of the country. On August 8, 1925, more than 40,000 members paraded down Pennsylvania Avenue. It was a huge show of strength. They were not afraid of showing their faces. And their new leader, Hiram Evans, was at the march too, as if there were nothing to hide. The Invisible Empire had never seemed so powerful.
Estimates put Klan membership at somewhere upward of 4 million members, which was a really significant proportion of the country's population, especially when we consider all of the groups who were excluded from joining the Klan. You were only allowed to become a Klan member if you had been born in the United States, if you were white, and if you were a Protestant. And so when we think about it, narrowing the population down along those lines, 4 million members is a terrifyingly large percentage of that population.
As the cameras focused on the march, another scene was taking place off-screen. Lobbyists for the Klan were working overtime in the background. Their influence on America...